Hello, this is Dan Farisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator, welcoming you to AV Plus, the podcast for the commercial AV integration industry. As we have for the last several weeks, we're focusing our podcast on members of the CI 40 Influencers Under 40 class of 2022 list. We have 3 40 Under 40 honorees with us this week. Alli Gritt, UCC Practice Program Coordinator, AVI-SPL, Anthony Magarelli, Director of Engineering, Audiovisual with USIS AudioVisual Systems, and Samantha Potter, Manager of Commercial and Install Audio with Allen Heath USA. We're looking forward to talking to all of them about their experiences in the commercial AV industry, how we can make it even better, and how we can make it even more intentional. Thank you for being part of the AV Plus podcast audience, and we look forward to sharing this podcast with you. As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube page, and please subscribe to the AV Plus podcast on Apple and on Spotify. Thank you so much, one and all, for joining us on the AV Plus podcast today. Let's get started, as we've done customarily with these special 40 Under 40 editions of the AV Plus podcast, talking about each of you individually. And why don't we start with you, Alli? In a few minutes, 2, 3, 4, why don't you describe a bit about your career progression, your career trajectory, and what has brought you to this level of, kind of esteem within the industry, quite frankly, where members of your peer group, colleagues, and even competitors might have nominated you for the 40 Under 40, and you've earned this recognition. What has brought you to this point?
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much. It's a very kind introduction there. I began my career actually in the reseller industry, and then I transitioned to software where I became aware of the AV industry. And everybody that I worked with, that I partnered with, was just so happy and so pleasant. And they just were overjoyed every single day. So when the opportunity presented itself to join the industry, I gladly took it. And I'm so glad I did, because it brought me to AVI-SPL, where I'm now in the unified communications and collaboration space. And I currently am the UCC Practice Program Coordinator, where I coordinate projects, programs, and initiatives around the UCC platforms, and also do a lot of process work for AVI-SPL and its teams, and also our customers, and that includes strategic and functional elements. So that's kind of what brought me to AVI-SPL in the industry. And in addition to my role in my day job, I am also the chair of one of our employee resource groups, and I'm very grateful to AVI-SPL for creating those groups and really just letting us thrive together.
Would you like to share a little bit about what that resource group does and what your role is in kind of leading it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our employee resource group is called Elevate, and we are focused on elevating gender equity in technology. As the chair, I'm sort of in charge of driving the group forward and making sure that we have initiatives that we can really meet to drive not only our company forward, but also the industry as a whole. Some of our big accomplishments include adopting an employee feedback program that is completely anonymous. So that is really a huge, not only company game changer, but just also an industry game changer as well, because it really creates this feeling of safety and connection. So, we are entering more of a hybrid workplace, a remote workplace, an on-site workplace, kind of composite of our industry and also other industries out there. So it really provides equity to each employee at our company to have that direct connection to the company and have their voice heard.
It's really laudable work. I commend you for it. And that topic of equity has risen so much to the fore in recent months and years. And people who are on the vanguard of it and trying to effectuate it in their organizations, I think are worthy of applause. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you so much.
So let's turn next to you, Samantha. Same question. I'd like to know a little bit about what has brought you to this point in your career, what continues to kind of fire your passion for the AV industry, and what has kind of brought you to this point where your peers and colleagues and even competitors, again, are honoring you as saying someone you should be on the 40 under 40 list.
I don't know if I can speak much to some of my colleagues nominated me, but as far as like getting to this point, I've have a large variation of jobs and careers that are kind of fit underneath the umbrella of audio and production and AV. And so looking back, it kind of makes sense that I ended up where I'm at. But at the time, of course, it doesn't feel like that. But yeah, I worked in AVIT sort of spaces, helping higher education kind of configure and start doing like dual campus synchronous courses where there's instructors and students on both sides for about 7 years before it was it's before the pandemic, before all of this. So by the time the pandemic did hit, it was an easy switch. It was like nothing ever happened. It was great. But getting to do that, but then also on the flip side of that, help them produce events, doing services for houses of worship, or whether I'm more in my editorial duties for publications like Pros on Web, where we're just trying to educate and teach people. You know, it all just kind of led to this space that I'm in now with Allen Heath, where I get to help develop a technology that fits us in the US markets to see how we like to learn, how we like to use products, how we approach jobs and integration in commercial spaces, and how that can influence iterations and designs for future technology or current technology that we've got. So, you know, what makes it fun and passionate is just, you know, maybe how I got here. I'll take a stab in the dark here. Is that I'm just really jazzed about audio and teaching and helping educate people. And so typically when I kind of sink my teeth into something, I pretty much just go for it. And the audio industry as a whole has really just been that for me. I've just loved it, dove in head first, and haven't let off the gas. And so I suppose here I am.
So tell me a little bit about what it's like working for Allen and Heath. Obviously, it's a very well-known name, you know, on both sides of the Atlantic. What is it like being part of that organization?
It's so great. I feel super lucky to get to be a part of the team in any capacity, and it's this great kind of energy where everybody is just as passionate as you are. Like everybody cares so much in caring about the technology, caring about people understanding it, caring about making things work correctly and reliable and sounding good. And it's not so large that you lose the kind of, it's almost like we have that sort of underdog kind of vibe about us, that we're always like pushing, we always want to do more, and we never really forget our roots. And so being able to work with them, it feels like such an honor, truly.
Very, very nice. Let's move certainly last but not least to Anthony Magarelli from USIS. Share a little bit, same question, Anthony, about the career trajectory that you have had to this point. What has brought you to the point, as I say, where your peers and colleagues are saying you should be recognized for all your good efforts on the 40 under 40 list? And what continues to inspire you and make you excited to get up each day and be part of the commercial AV industry?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here and meet with everybody. I fell into the industry completely backwards. About 20 years ago, I was bartending and I needed a real job with real benefits. And I got a job driving a delivery truck for an AV company. And I saw how interesting the products were and the projects they were doing. And once I got my hands on the products, I never turned back. I found it really interesting and really cool that I could think of something, build it, and then watch it do what I imagined. And that excitement has never left 20 years later. And I'm sitting here with you primarily because of the people I've worked with. I would never be here if I wasn't fortunate enough to work with some real good mentors, whether they knew it or not. They always sat next to me and they explained, here's what you're doing and here's why you're doing it. And that kind of built this, whole concept of you can do anything if you can think it and believe it and you actually do it. And day after day, the way the industry changes from the analog days and the ISDN days to where we are today, wirelessly, it never changes. And it's a great career because every day is different, every project is different, and it's not boring. And the people that I'm with enjoy it, the clients and our customers enjoy it, and it's really fulfilling. It's not just a job, it's a passion and a career, and the people around me make it possible, and I'm really happy about it. So that's probably the synopsis of how I got here, and I'm so grateful that I made this list. As soon as I saw it, I've always wanted to be on it, but it's such a hard list to get on. So I'm really thankful, and I really owe a thanks to all my colleagues. I wouldn't be here without them.
Well, congratulations. You certainly have earned in every way your place on the list. And what I will say, just to echo what your point is, Anthony, is that so much of this industry is exactly what you're talking about. Not just the people we work with who lift us up and inspire us and kind of get our creative juices flowing, but also the idea that we are, to use some of the terms we've heard from Avixa and others, kind of memory makers and experience generators and smile creators. And the idea, as you say, of kind of envisioning something in your head and then bringing it to fruition, and not just bringing it to fruition, but also seeing the reaction that it evokes in the end users, in the clients, seeing the experiences that you have helped facilitate, something that you've ideated. That must be very, very satisfying. And I have to imagine that, as you near 40, just like I near 40, it's something that's going to keep you going decades into the future, because that feeling never gets old. Creating something for people and seeing what their reaction is to what you have created. So let's move on to some of the more kind of analytical or some of the more open discussion portions of this. I don't know how active the three of you are on AV Tweep's Twitter, but when the 40 under 40 starts being promoted, there are some people who kind of express that it may not be optimal because it's excluding people who are maybe over 40, over 50, there may not be value in simply focusing on those who are under 40, the younger generation. I'd like to know your collective opinion, and it doesn't need to be super navel-gazing talking about the CI 40 under 40 specifically. Do you think there's value in spotlighting, specifically in the commercial AV industry, young professionals who have achieved great things and are recognized as superstars? And if so, why do you think there's value? Or if you don't, why do you think there's not value?
I absolutely think it is a value to it. Whether they would like a second list or an all-inclusive list, sure. But I think the youth is absolutely paramount in keeping this industry relevant and making it become embraced today and tomorrow. If you don't include the youth and those who are excited about it, where are we really going tomorrow? But to the credit to those who have been here yesterday and today, they deserve a list, and I don't want them to feel excluded. But to shine a light on the youngsters, I sign up for that any day.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Sure, I'll echo some of that. Yeah, well, on one hand, the very fact that we're on this list means we're part of the youthful generation, so our opinions are a tad biased. But I think it's great, especially for people who are younger than I am, in that we need to be able to show it, to be able to show that this is a possibility, this is something that you can work towards and that you can earn. If you don't see it, you don't know it. And by having this list and curating this, we can say, yeah, there are more people, they're up and coming, big things are happening whether you see it or not, and this list is a way for us to shine a spotlight on that. The people who have been working in the field for a long time have sort of garnered their own merits, they become almost like an enigma in the field, people know the name, and so they don't need as much pomp and circumstance. But for the young ones who are just maybe on their second awesome thing or their third awesome thing, or they're just 26, just giving them a little bit of a boost, I think is good. And it's just good, all in good fun.
I certainly agree with that. There's so many, name brand individuals, so to speak, in our industry, people whose reputation precedes them, people who, if you see them on a list of speakers, you immediately think, oh, she is a legend. How can I not listen to what she has to say or he has to say? And I do think you make a very good point, Samantha, that there are people who are in the younger generation who may only have had 2 or 3 major accomplishments, but who have brilliant, insightful things to say. And to offer them a platform is a really important thing, because people may not just see their name and sit up and take notice, but eventually they would, and they ought to listen to those people now as well.
Yeah, you got to start someplace.
So kind of piggybacking on that same question, what I'd like to know is, so many people have talked about having fallen into the commercial AV industry. I know, like Anthony, you said, if maybe you're a bartender and you end up in this industry by hook or by crook. I think a lot of people would agree that it would benefit our industry to find more intentional paths for people to be part of commercial AV. So I have kind of a 2-part question. Number one, what are some of the paths that you would suggest, either paths that you personally have found useful or that others have found useful? And 2, do you agree that it actually is to the detriment of commercial AV that there isn't a more specific way for people to find us? I mean, a lot of people who fell into the industry have turned out to be superstars, but is it to our detriment that we're not nurturing these people from school to technical college to university, nurturing them into our fold?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of have a kind of 2-part problem here. There's the lack of awareness that this industry exists, and then there is the kind of, gender disparity and other disparities within the industry. So we can't address the second until we address the first and kind of get that awareness. And ways that we could do that is really becoming involved in STEM programs, from high school and college, and just kind of providing those paid internships to introduce people to the industry. If you're interested in a career in technology, well, AV is one way that you can achieve that career, and you can actually achieve it at a very entry level point as well, which in other technology industries, you may not be able to achieve that. So you could potentially have a lifelong career in AV from the very beginning, from your first job. And then once we've kind of established that, and we have kind of those internship programs and other types of programs to kind of get people into the industry, then we can really see that we'll have more diversity within the industry, and we can address any sort of gender or race or ethnicity disparities within our industry, and really kind of work for more equity within our industry as well.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what Alli said is absolutely yep. But I think it is to our detriment that there is not a more clear pathway to it. So the people that do end up in the field are amazing, so many rock stars. But if we sort of had a little bit more intention on, maybe it's about making it seem sexier, like maybe the field, like I know you don't care about benefits at 17, but let me tell you about a 9-to-5 when you're 35, and like what that can offer people, because it's just something that you don't think about when you're younger. But to say, like, kind of make it seem like, well, you know, AV, like, that could mean so many different things and so many different roles. It doesn't have to be this like cookie cutter experience. Like, you could be out helping design stadiums if that's super cool to you, or helping entire chains of restaurants get set up, and you're the linchpin for it. You know, there's so many things like that a lot of I didn't even really discover it until I got here. And so maybe the existence of this list, like us doing this podcast or having those intentional conversations about, like, here's all the different kinds of opportunities that you can have in here, might help spread the word. And you know, the conversation about gender and race disparities could, like, literally just be an hour topic all by itself, in getting and retaining people. But yeah.
Any thoughts on it, Anthony?
Yeah, I think everything that was stated was right on point and accurate. But I would play devil's advocate to the point of, I think a lot of the reason that some folks find themselves successful in AV is that it does not follow the same trajectory path that all the other college-based, educational-based verticals follow. I don't necessarily like 9-to-5 college. It wasn't for me. I'm a hands-on person. So as long as we tailor the educational vertical, the awareness campaign to nurture those that fell in the same way I did, I think that would be paramount. And, that would fall right in line with everything else that was just spoken about.
Absolutely. And I know, to your point, Samantha, we could be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion on an entirely separate podcast, but I do think it calls for some follow-up. And I think you made the point very eloquently, Alli, that one of the problems with our industry is not only not having some kind of a clear pathway, but also we are still overwhelmingly homogenous. I think it's something like 85% male to 15% female if you look at AVI-SPL's research, and it's improving, but it was improving from maybe 95.5 to 85.15, which is still not where we want to be. Do you think that kind of a lot of young people in our industry and elsewhere want to work with organizations and work in industries that reflect their values, that reflect their philosophy, that resonate with them in a way beyond this is how I get my paycheck? Is it as existential in some sense for commercial AV to find ways to diversify and to be more inclusive if we're going to keep people like you, who I'm sure, as I say, want to be part of an organization, want to be part of an industry that resonates with your values? Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, I can start. So yeah, it's very important to, attract and retain talent, especially, the most talented of, the industry. And there are a lot of things that companies can do and our industry can do, and that could be from policies at the workplace that include paid parental leave, not just paid maternity leave or paid paternity leave, but just making it paid parental leave, because, without parents, there are no future employees. So if we're constantly looking to the future, we know that we want this industry to succeed in the long run. We know that we want future employees. How do we get there? Well, step one, provide paid parental leave and provide enough to ensure that, you can not only recover medically if you are a birth giver, but also every parent has the opportunity to bond with their child. And that will also lead into allowing parents to ramp back up in the workplace. But also, let's not forget about those who choose not to be parents or are just not parents. We also would need to hire contractors so they are not disparately burdened by somebody going out on leave. There are many other policies that could be enacted to kind of even the playing field. One thing to always think about is that by 2025, 75% of the workforce is actually going to be millennial, and that's a global statistic. So what are millennials facing that previous generations are not? One of them is the student loan debt crisis. So, providing something like student debt loan relief as a benefit for the company will help to attract and retain that talent. Sometimes that is the deciding factor between deciding on where you're going to work. Will this company provide relief for my student loans, or will they not? Because oftentimes those exceed rent and mortgage payments. So sometimes you might want to pursue a career in a certain industry, but you can't because of the benefits. And there are so many other things that companies can do, like flexibility in the workplace, allowing people to set their own hours, hybrid models, remote models, if that's possible, different travel expense policies, such as human milk storage and human milk transport. It just goes on and on and on. But these are all the things that create a positive work-life integration.
So many interesting points there, Alli. And I think I kind of even want to broaden it out a little bit more, because we're talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we're also talking about what kind of an environment is going to make superstars like the three of you want to stay in the organizations that you're part of. So, Samantha, Anthony, let me know your perspective. And it doesn't have to be super personalized. It doesn't have to be about your organization per se, but when you think about young superstars like yourselves, people who are well respected and well regarded among your peers, what can organizations do to hang on to folks like you so you don't fall prey to the quote unquote great resignation and go look for greener pastures elsewhere? What should organizations be doing?
For me, it's all about flexibility, and Alli really kind of started to get into that, is just the idea of flexibility. I think millennials in particular, we kind of came of age into like young adulthood in a real hustle culture. And I think that paid off really well for several handfuls of people. But now we're kind of all getting to a point like, okay, well, what if my work-life balance changed? Or now that we're getting older, our priorities are changing. What does that look like? And so having the flexibility of hours, time, travel, the projects, being able to have autonomy and not this like idea of being micromanaged. Most of my peers flourish under the autonomy and having no like constant direct supervision, being allowed to be the rock stars that they are, giving them space to do that like makes them even better. And I think that we need to really approach management that way as well. Maybe the old way doesn't work anymore, especially after the last few years. We kind of see that we can do even better by doing something completely differently.
So I'll just ask as we wrap up the pod, if any of you have any closing thoughts. Obviously this is a platform where we want to elevate voices like yours about how our industry can be better, how it can be more inclusive, how it can be more intentional, how it can be more effective, and how we can continue to effectuate the kind of results that we were talking about, Anthony, about making sure our clients are experiencing these incredible creations for years and decades in the future. If you have any closing thoughts collectively about ways we can be better, ways we should be better, and your own insights, uniquely as superstars within the industry to effectuate those kind of ends.
Yeah, I would say definitely checking in with your employees and seeing what they need, just providing that pathway for anonymous employee feedback, providing poll surveys to your employees. So there are multiple touch points throughout the year so you can understand that feedback and just really listen to them and give them what they say they need. And I think that would really help to not only retain talent, but also to attract talent, because we would be able to, whenever somebody reaches out to us, curious about a role that's posted or, a job that they might be interested in, we would be able to attract them and retain them.
I would say I would echo it, particularly listen. When you ask a question, listen to the answer. Don't just ask the question just to be asking the question. Hear what they're saying because they mean it. Simple as that.
Very, very good advice. Unless there's anything else anyone would like to share, I would just like to thank all three of you for being on the AV Plus podcast this week. I commend all of you for the contributions you've made and are continuing to make and will continue to make to our industry, and for kind of shining a light on the opportunity that does exist for a lot of women and men, whether they're in high school, whether they're in technical college, whether they're out in the field setting up systems, whether they're in university, that we have a place for them. We crave their talents, we crave their contributions, and we would love to see them part of our community. So I want to thank once again Alli Gritt, UCC Practice Program Coordinator with AVI-SPL, Anthony Magarelli, who is Director of Engineering Audiovisual with USIS AudioVisual Systems, and Samantha Potter, who is Manager of Commercial and Install Audio at Allen Heath USA, for being on the AV Plus podcast this week. Please watch and listen to the AV Plus podcast each and every Friday. Just go to commercialintegrator.com. And we were going to be continuing this series of 40 Under 40 class of 2022 podcasts for the next several weeks until we include just about everyone who is on this year's list. Thank you once again, Alli, Samantha, and Anthony for being here.